Okay, this lesson is about PE ratio. Do you agree that I told you we're going to ignore that column on the list last lesson? Because right now it was just a column with a number that didn't mean anything. Why did we ignore it? Because today is about where do I get meaning from it. So we previously skimmed over PE ratio because we go into detail about it now. The PE ratio is basically a comparison between the current price of a company's shares and how much profit that company makes. For our purposes, I don't need you to understand all of that. Literally for this topic, all you need to be able to do is look at what the PE ratio is, read it, and then look at this table and spout out what the interpretation is. So that would go on your cheat sheet. Maybe a simplified version of it. You don't have to write all of these. So if I was to go back to the share listings from last lesson, if I found that the company had a PE ratio of 5, so it would go here, what would I say about that company? You can say it. No one's going to know what your voice sounds like. If I found a company that had a PE ratio of 5, what would I say about it? Yes?
It's either undervalued or it's going to decline.
Yes. Was there any working out involved with that? You look and you read and you write what it says. Okay? So what I'll ask you to do, I'll give you time to get the table down, like 5 minutes. And please note, while you're copying that down, you need to note that you can only compare PE ratios when the companies are similar to each other. So you can talk about PE ratios of Coles and Woolies. Why? What kind of companies are they? Supermarkets. So comparing their PE ratios actually means something. But that PE ratio, I'm not going to be able to compare it with BHP because they're not a supermarket. They're a mining company, okay? So I'll give you some writing time for that table. I'll be back with you at 10 past. Okay, this is where the maths actually comes in. To actually calculate the PE ratio, you need this formula. All I've shown you so far is, look at the number in the table, what does it mean? But for our purposes, you need to be able to work out what the PE ratio is. So you need to work out the PE ratio using the formula in succession. What does succession mean? What does in succession mean?
You do one first and the other
Yes,
after.
because if you started off with the bottom one, is there something that you need from the top formula? Yeah. You need to do it in order. That's what it means by in succession. So in a couple of minutes, can you get these two formula down, please? So clearly, once you use these formula, given the information needed, when you find the PE ratio for the company, you can then use the table before to interpret the meaning of that PE ratio. So a couple of minutes to get that down. So like I said, this little waiting time is not ideal. That's the disadvantage we have of being in this room. But the advantage you'll have is literally everything that I'm saying and what's happening on this screen will be recorded as an MP4. Okay? And I'll just chuck it up on YouTube for views. Most of the subs are actually Blackwood and Renella East kids. Thank you. All right, let's do it. So let's do an example. For example, BHP is an Australian mining company and reported a net profit of 36.5 million for ordinary shareholders and 73 million ordinary shares on issue. A, calculate the PE ratio if the current share price is $8. So you have to use the formulae in sequence. So you need to work out earnings per share first. Earnings per share equals, what do I need to know for the earnings per share, the profit, and I also need to know the number of shares. Which number there is the profit that BHP made?
36.5.
Good, 36.5 million, so it's going to be 36500,000, 36.5 million divided by what? How many shares were there? 73 million, so 73, and how many zeros am I going to chuck there? 6. 73, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. 36500,000 divided by 73 million. So I get 0.5. It's basically that's saying 50 cents earnings per share. So then I use the second formula, which is PE ratio. What was the PE ratio? Share price over earnings per share. What was the share price for BHP for purposes? 8. So it's going to be share price of 8 divided by 0.5. 8 divided by half. How many halves are there in 8? 16. So the PE ratio is 16. B. Interpret the meaning of the PE ratio of BHP at this time. What does this question require you to do? It requires you to read and look at a table and then write what the table says. So PE ratio is 16 means that. So I'm going to quickly squiz up to the table and come back. 16 is between 10 and 20, so the company may be considered reasonable value. That's all I'm going to write. Means that the... Sorry, you need to write the question. Means that the company is reasonable value. C. Woolworths at the same time makes a profit of 86 million. It has 400 million ordinary shares on issue. Woolworths share price is $3.44. So it's asking you to do that again for Woolies. Earnings per share. Profit of 86, 0, 400 million. A lot of zeros there. If you want to put the commas to help you check, no one's going to mark you down for that. So the earnings per share is 86 million divided by 400 million. 0.215. And PE ratio. What's the share price of Woolies for the working out here? Is it $8 still? $3.44 divided by 0.215. $3.44 divided by 0.215 is 16 as well. I didn't plan that. I just chucked these numbers together. So that wasn't intended, but whatever. It doesn't affect what we're trying to do. 2, interpret the meaning of the PE ratio of Woolworths at the same time. Was it in the same area of the table as BHP? It was between 10 and 20 as well. So reasonable value again. So reasonable value. And then 3, last one. Is it reasonable to compare the PE ratios of BHP and Woolworths? Are they the same industry? No. So you'd be like, no, they are different industries. So I'll give you some writing time for that example.